I'm going to show you a very interesting game played by Magnus Carlsen against the reigning world rapid champion Volodar Murzin. And it's a really special game, especially for me, because against the move 1e4, Magnus Carlsen played my move d5, the Scandinavian opening. And as you probably know, I have actually made a lifetime repertoire on Chessable, special course on this specific opening, worked out in detail. So I'm always really curious to see how world's best players are going to deal with it. And of course, the main move here is to take the pawn on d5. However, Murzin in this blitz game, he decided to advance the pawn to e5, which is a kind of a strange move, but it has of course been played by a lot of people, and therefore needs to be taken seriously. And I've actually covered it all in my lifetime repertoire, and just by coincidence, it's since today that the lifetime repertoires on Chessable, they are for sale. So you better hurry up and get a copy of my work. I'm gonna give you some little insight on what may happen after this move, because here we play the move c5, preventing white from playing the move d4, and white instead played here the move f4, supporting the pawn in a different way, knight c6, knight f3, and in my course, I actually do recommend here to bring the bishop out to f5, followed by e6, when we do have the best of both worlds, like it is some sort of a French structure, but the light squared bishop is outside the chain, and later on we have great ideas to expand on the queen side. I mean, it's all worked out in detail. I'm not going to bother you with my course any longer. Just let's have a look how Magnus handles this position as he goes for bishop g4. That's also a very sensible move and very often a good idea. I do like in particular bringing out the bishop to g4 if white has placed the pawn on d4, so that you do intensify the pressure on white's center. Now white played here the move bishop b5, intending to ruin the structure by giving up the bishop for the knight. And you don't want to get these doubled pawns. So with the bishop on f5, I do actually recommend here the move rook c8 to protect the knight on c6. But Magnus played queen b6. Attacking the bishop at the same time also perfectly makes sense. a4 played, and here Magnus goes for the move a6. He is questioning the bishop. Here a little funny moment, because objectively black's play is a bit imprecise. He is doing comfortable, but here the key move for white, and it was missed by both players, is to insert this little funny pawn move a5 to attack the queen. And obviously the pawn cannot be taken because the knight is pinned. But also the bishop cannot be taken here because it does run into knight c3. And after the queen goes away, it's rook a4 and the queen is trapped. Now, of course, after a5, you could drop back with the queen to c7 and the game goes on. But let's have a look. After the game's continuation, bishop takes knight, queen takes back. The question is white going to play the move a5 or not? In the game, Murzin decided not to play this move, but I think it would have been very useful for white to have the pawn on a5, because after pushing the b-pawn, you're always able to capture en passant, and then black will end up with split pawns on the a and c file. So instead, they follow the move d3, which is also fine, and both sides continue with their own development. Black goes for e6, white goes knight bd2, so that after the move h5, black is trying to get a nice grip on the light squares. White plays h3. Now black is ready to swap the bishop for the knight. White is able to recapture with that knight. And now knight e7, bishop e3. The knight comes to f5 with tempo, hitting the bishop. Bishop goes back to f2. And now key idea for black in those structures is to fix the kingside here with the move h4. A very similar idea as we have seen earlier, like white could have placed the pawn on a5. Here, with the pawn on h4, that g-pawn cannot be moved forward as it will be captured en passant. So the knight on f5 is a very nice stable piece, and after castling kingside, you put a bishop on e7, over protecting the pawn. Black is in good shape, but still, a5, it's always a possibility. But Murzin decides differently, played here the move queen d2, connecting the rooks, and here black finally expands on the queen side here with the move b5. Pawn takes b5, pawn takes b5. Of course, the rook is protected by the queen. And white doesn't want to trade rooks here yet, because that will give black control over the open a file. White instead played the move rook a5. And the rook is counting on the support of the queen. Black played b4. So now black is actually threatening to take the unprotected rook. But white is in time. Rook fa1. Castling kingside. And well, everything perfectly defended. And white played here the move queen e1. Interesting moment in the game, as white is actually adding more pressure to the pawn on h4, which has been attacked. Now, 3 times, it has only been twice defended, but black captures on a5. Rook takes a5, rook a8. And here you ask yourself, can white win a pawn by trading off first the rook on a8? Well, black can recapture in that case, of course. Knight takes h4. Then you can take with the bishop. Bishop takes h4. And here you do follow up with the move queen a2. And even though white is up a pawn, that's not going to be for very long. The pawn on b2 is going to drop very soon. Possibly the pawn on c2 as well. And the queen on e1, it's not able to help out, because it also got to keep the bishop on h4 defended. Black is taking over in that case. So white is unable to win a pawn. Instead played the move queen a1. Keeping the rook protected and saying that, okay, the pawn on h4, maybe later he can pick it up. Rook takes a5, queen takes a5. And white's queen on a5 looks great, but it's not really able to attack anything. Black's pawns are perfectly supported by the pieces, and it's black who further grabs the initiative on the queen side here with the move c4. If you do take the pawn, the queen takes, and these pawns on f4 and c2 are really vulnerable. Therefore, white decided here to play the move d4, keep the position closed. Black played b3. Attacking the pawn on c2. And how is white going to respond? Well, if you do take on b3, black is able to take back with the pawn, and the c file is opened. And their idea is to come to c2 or c1 and hit the pawn on b2. Therefore, white instead has to keep the position closed. And look at this pawn formation. This is a beautiful pawn chain, especially with all those pawns being placed on light squares. The bishop on e7 is a great piece. It's not hindered by its own pawns. And the same can actually not be said about the bishop on f2. Look at those pawns. They are restricting the mobility of that dark squared bishop. How is black going to make progress? Well, step by step, black is making useful moves. Queen b7, preventing the queen from getting in somewhere, somehow. Queen a4, maybe a check on e8 is in the air, therefore king f8 was played. But there's nothing else white can do. King f1, queen c8, mysterious move. King e2. And the king goes back to g8. Black is not really making progress here at all. White played the move king d1. Maybe you could also have moved your king in the other direction, who knows. Now it's the move queen d8. Excellent move. And after king e2, well, the standard plan in those positions here for black is to bring up the king to h7 and maybe get the queen over to the h file. Maybe the queen can come to h5 or h7. This is a nice way to further increase the pressure, but it's also very understandable here that Magnus played the move g5. He is opening up the king side, which is an excellent move. And here, white's position is falling apart very fast. Pawn takes g5, bishop takes g5. If you do take on g5, it's queen takes g5. And look at this knight and the queen. They are a fantastic attacking duo with threats against the pawn on g2. But also the pawn on b2 is a serious issue here. And white is in really bad shape. Instead of taking the bishop, they follow the move queen a1. The queen is coming back. But now the king comes to h7. The knight goes to h2. And the queen comes to g8. Fantastic positional play by Magnus Carlsen. He's activating the queen, bringing it to the half open file, indirectly pressurizing the pawn on g2. First you got to move the bishop in that case. But okay, the knight comes to g4. White is trying to keep that file closed. And on a good day, there could be a knight fork on f6. Therefore the bishop got to retain control over that f6 square. But first it's queen g6. And now you see the queen, the black queen, is about to join the attack. And only black has to move the knight away to open up the diagonal for the queen to enter on one of those squares. King went back to f1. And anyway, knight g3, which is an excellent move. It's a check. If you take it, you can take back with a pawn. And now there are serious threats, like the queen can come to c2. Even bishop c1 is an idea to hit the pawn, the base of the chain. And pawn on b2, and maybe c3 and d4. Everything can fall. You can create a passed pawn. You can play for mating threats against the king. White is not going to survive this. White tried instead of taking the knight to run away with the king. But anyway, the queen comes in to c2. And well, here, king h2 was played. But black can still further strengthen his position here with his move. Bishop to f4. Very nice idea. And you can see there are threats in the air. How are you going to deal with a discovered check by the knight? Still, if you do take on g3, black is going to take back with the pawn. And after king h1, bishop c1, we have already been discussing this scenario. You're even threatening mate on the back rank. Thanks to the pawn on g3, the king can't move. Instead, Murzin, with only seconds on the clock, he played here the move queen a7. He is looking for counterplay. He's giving up the pawn on b2, but obviously black is not interested in that pawn. It runs into queen takes f7, and all of a sudden white has a winning mating attack. So instead, king g7 is a very important resource, of course, just to keep the pawn protected. There are no good checks. Everything is under control. And for instance, if you decide now to go back with the queen to a1, one very nice technical idea I wanted to show you is that, of course, you're looking for a concrete way to finish off the game. But I'm pretty sure that Magnus, in that case, he would certainly have considered this move, queen c1. With the idea to attack the queen. If the queen goes away, it could be checkmate on h1. If you do swap queens, this endgame is so hopeless. And here you see why this is such a long-term problem for white. This base of the chain cannot be supported by a pawn or another piece. So this is winning for black. Final two moves of the game were here queen e7, hoping to give a check on f6. But then there's indeed a winning discovered check with the move knight f5. It's a check with the bishop, and the knight on the next move is going to grab the queen. I thought this was a very instructive game with the Scandinavian opening, in which white, of course, didn't accept the challenge to test Magnus Carlsen in the main lines. But it's nice to see every now and then how to play those positions with black. In case your opponent advances the pawn to e5. And well, if you would like to learn more about it, you know what to do. This is your chance. The sale is going on for only 12 more days. So better don't think twice and get your own copy. Thanks for watching. And if you do like my videos, you know also you can subscribe to the channel, and I will see you soon again. Bye bye.